Imagine sitting in a dark, maybe slightly damp summer.
Oh, setting a mood right away.
Yeah, exactly. The air is heavy. And on the screen in front of you, the camera is focused on a rusted, filthy metal screw.
Okay.
And it's buried in a piece of decaying wood. The lighting is harsh, throwing these really deep, jagged shadows across the splinters.
Right.
And then, slowly, the screw begins to turn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it untwists itself from the floorboard. And the thing is, it doesn't look like a cartoon.
Right, it's not drawn.
Exactly. And it doesn't look like a digital effect either. It looks entirely real.
Because it is real.
Right. And yet, looking at this piece of dead, discarded metal, moving with this strange, halting intent, you suddenly feel this overwhelming sense of grief.
Grief from a screw.
Yeah. Or maybe anxiety. Or this bizarre, creeping melancholy. And you are forced to ask yourself, why?
Yeah, how does that happen?
How can a piece of hardware that I know is completely inanimate make my heart rate spike?
Well, I mean, that right there, that is the threshold of a very strange world.
It really is.
Because a screw in our everyday waking life is just dead matter.
Yeah, completely.
It has absolute utility. It holds things together. It's binary. It's either useful or useless.
Right.
But what you're describing is a profound disruption of that basic physical reality.
And that disruption is exactly what we are exploring today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So we are taking you on a journey through an incredibly rich, dense, and frankly mind-bending PhD thesis.
It really is a dense one.
It is. It's by Suzanne Lukin, and it's titled The Metaphysical Playroom, The Puppet Animations of Stephen and Timothy Quay.
The Quay brothers.
Yes, the Quay brothers. If you aren't familiar with them, they're identical twin filmmakers.
Right.
And they use stop-motion puppet animation to bring inanimate, scavenged objects to life.
Stuff they just find.
Exactly. But our mission today isn't just to look at the technical process of moving puppets around.
No, the technical process is really just the vehicle here.
Right.
The real destination is understanding the psychological and philosophical impact of that movement.
Yeah,
exactly. Buchan's work uses the quays as like a lens to examine how our brains perceive reality.
Right, how we interact with the physical world.
Yeah, and how art can completely dismantle our everyday sensory algorithms.
So we're going to break down why their films make viewers feel simultaneously enchanted, disoriented, and amazed.
All at the same time.
Right. We are talking about the hidden life of the object sitting on your desk right now.
That is a fun thought.
So to start unpacking this, let's look at Buchan's own introduction to this phenomenon.
Okay.
Because she doesn't start her thesis with dry academic theory.
Thank goodness.
Right. She starts with a memory.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, this is the mid-1980s. She's in the middle of writing a master's thesis on James Joyce.
Oh, wow. So she's already steeped in dense, difficult, modernist literature.
Exactly. Her brain is already in that mode.
Yeah.
And she attends a screening in a literal dank cellar.
Just like your intro.
Exactly like the intro. They show a 1986 film by the Quay brothers called Street of Crocodiles.
Which is arguably their masterpiece.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and certainly their most analyzed work.
Well, she watches this film, and she is entirely... She describes this profound, almost violently visceral reaction to it.
Yeah.
The film is full of dust, hollow dolls, strange breathing machines, and moving screws.
It sounds like a nightmare, honestly.
It visually is stunning,
Yeah.
but the narrative is completely baffling.
Right.
And the kicker is, when the lights come up and she tries to explain what she just experienced to a friend, she finds herself completely paralyzed.
Paralyzed, like she couldn't speak.
She literally cannot find the vocabulary to describe what happened on that screen.
You know, her paralysis there is actually a recognized phenomenon in early film theory.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When we talk about cinema, especially experimental or, highly atmospheric cinema.
Like the Quays.
Exactly. We often run into the absolute limits of language.
Okay, that makes sense.
The film theorist Gene Mutry actually coined a term for this back in the mid-20th century.
Oh, what did he call it?
He called it the wow experience.
The wow experience. I mean,
Yeah.
no offense to John Mitry, but that sounds a bit simplistic for a major film theorist.
No, it sounds super colloquial, right? But Mutry is pointing to something deeply neurological.
Okay, how so?
He argued that the wow experience is a fundamental pre-verbal state of awe.
Pre-verbal, meaning before we even have words for it.
Exactly. It is the raw, unmediated impact of the moving image before the intellect even steps in to categorize it.
Wow, okay.
Think about the sheer compelling nature of a created world called projecting light onto your retinas in a dark room.
Right.
Maitri suggested that this purely emotional, pre-intellectual shock is actually the entire engine that drives film criticism.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Critics dedicate their lives to analyzing lighting and editing simply because they are chasing the ghost of that initial, inexplicable wow.
That makes so much sense.
They're trying to build an intellectual framework to explain why the world on the screen felt so overwhelmingly heavy.
Right. And why real life seems so pale and flat when they walked out of the theater.
Exactly.
So the intellect is basically playing catch-up to the body's reaction.
Basically, yeah.
Because Buchanan is sitting there, her intellect is scrambling, and she finally has to reach back into her James Joyce research to find a phrase that even comes close to capturing the feeling.
Oh, what was the phrase?
She pulls out this Italian phrase that Joyce used in his own letters. Visione animato al fine dello scoppio.
A vision animated to the bursting point.
I love that translation so much.
Good, right.
It captures the tension perfectly.
Right.
A vision animated to the bursting point.
Yeah.
It implies that the image on the screen is so dense, so overloaded with texture and implication, that the frame itself can barely contain it.
It's like it's going to explode.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
feels illogical. It operates on dream logic.
Right.
The academic term Buchanan uses is oneric,
Numeric.
and it's exhilarating.
Mm-hmm.
She knows, logically, that a figure made of hollow wood and wires cannot be alive.
Obvious.
Her brain knows it's a trick. But the vision is pushed so far to the bursting point that her senses override her logic.
Right.
She perceives life where there shouldn't be.
And that tension brings us to a really fascinating historical context that Buchanan highlights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this desire to find life in the lifeless isn't actually a new concept in film.
Okay.
She pulls this brilliant quote from Rachel Lindsay.
Who is that?
He was a poet, mostly, but he also wrote one of the earliest books on film theory, The Art of the Moving Picture.
Wow. Early film theory. When was this?
Back in 1915, and he expanded on it in 1919.
Okay, so very early.
Yeah, and he was analyzing what he called the trick film.
Like early special effects.
Exactly, the early camera techniques of Georges Méliès and others.
Right, right.
Lindsay asked a very subversive question for his time. He looked at these films and asked, why do human beings have to be the protagonists?
Oh, that's interesting, because at that time, movies were basically just filmed stage plays, right? The camera was planted,
Yeah.
and actors just acted in front of it.
Yeah, the props were just there to support the human drama.
Right.
But Lindsay saw that the camera had its own unique idiosyncrasies.
Right.
It could manipulate time and space. So he argued for decentering the human experience entirely.
Really?
Yeah. Why not make the mechanical, non-human object the hero?
Let the camera elevate the prop.
Exactly.
Quote she uses from him is fantastic. He says we should stop using props just to prop up actors.
Right.
He says, let the rope be the humorist. Let the stick be the outstanding hero, the D'Artagnan of the group, full of queer gestures and hoppings about. Let him beat the dog most heroically.
I mean, it's a very playful quote, but the philosophical implication is massive.
It really is.
Lindsay recognized a century ago that the cinematic apparatus possesses this unique power to personify the inanimate.
Yeah.
When the Quay brothers animate a collection of rusted screws, playfully congregating and twirling into a floorboard in Street of Crocodiles.
Which is exactly what we were talking about earlier.
Right. They are the ultimate realization of Lindsay's century-old vision.
But it's just so hard to explain how that feels to someone who hasn't seen it, you know?
It is. It really is.
Like, okay, think about waking up from a deeply profound, emotionally devastating dream.
Oh, yeah.
You wake up in a cold sweat. Your heart is hammering against your ribs.
Yeah, we've all been there.
You feel this immense, lingering sense of grief. Or maybe a strange, soaring triumph.
Right.
Stumble into the kitchen, pour a cup of coffee, and you try to explain it to your partner.
Oh, good luck with that.
Right. Because the moment you open your mouth, the vocabulary of the waking world just completely betrays you.
It does.
You say, well, we were in my childhood basement, but the basement was also submarine, and my boss was there, but he was actually a floor lamp.
Yeah, and they're just staring at you.
Exactly. As you speak, you can see your partner trying not to laugh. The words make the experience sound totally ridiculous.
I really do.
But the feeling in your chest was as real as any waking emotion. That is exactly what Buchanan is getting at. You are experiencing a foreign syntax.
Yeah.
You have the intense emotions, but waking world logic simply cannot contain the bizarre bursting point reality of the dream.
You know, that analogy captures the frustration of the wow experience perfectly.
It's so frustrating.
You are trying to translate a spatial emotional event into linear language.
Right.
And to understand the architects of this specific foreign syntax, we really need to look briefly at the Quays themselves.
Even in Timothy Quay.
Yes, they are identical twins born in Pennsylvania in 1947.
Oh, they're American.
They are, but they relocated to London decades ago and have operated there as expatriates ever since.
And from what Buchan describes, they operate in a way that is almost unheard of in modern filmmaking.
Really? How so?
They aren't just co-directors who, split the duties. They're essentially a single creative organism.
Buchan actually makes a point of noting how impenetrable their collaborative process is.
Okay.
It is practically impossible to separate their individual contributions.
Well,
Wow.
They share a unified, almost symbiotic aesthetic vision. When you watch interviews with them, they finish each other's sentences, they defer to each other constantly.
Wild.
They are basically 4 hands, 4 ears, 4 eyes, working on a single miniature set.
And they have this producer, Keith Griffiths, who seems, absolutely essential to their survival.
Oh, how are they?
Because in an industry that is entirely focused on commercial viability, demographic testing, easily digestible narratives.
Everything they are not.
Right. Griffiths has spent decades operating as a shield and a co-conspirator for them.
Yeah.
He champions their fiercely independent auteur style, allowing them to just remain in their studio, moving dust around with tweezers.
Yeah, Griffiths is basically the bridge between their insular microscopic world and the harsh realities of film funding.
Right.
Without someone to translate their highly idiosyncratic vision into, grant proposals and distribution deals, their work might never have reached an audience.
That's a scary thought. But acknowledging that they create a profound, dreamlike reaction is really only the first step.
Okay, what's next?
To truly understand the mechanics of this reaction, Buchan argues we have to examine the physical, literal nuts and bolts of their construction.
The actual animation process.
Yes, we have to dissect the anatomy of their metaphysical playroom.
Okay, let's get into the physical parameters of this. Because when people hear animation, they usually think of 2 things.
Right.
They think of traditional 2D animation, Disney, Looney Tunes, anime, where artists are drawing on flat pieces of paper or celluloid.
Classic animation.
Right. Or they think of modern 3D digital animation Pixar, DreamWorks, where a computer generates a mathematical wireframe and paints pixels over it.
Which is most of what we see today.
Exactly. But stop-motion puppet animation is fundamentally different from both of those.
It is an entirely different ontological category.
Big word, ontological.
Sorry, it just means it's a completely different kind of being. Traditional drawn animation utilizes flat, planar materials. CGI utilizes virtual mathematical space. But stop-motion puppet animation utilizes actual physical space-filling objects.
Real stuff.
Yes, the puppets and the sets occupy 3-dimensional space in the exact same way that you and I do.
Now,
They are subject to real-world gravity, real-world lighting, and real-world optics.
so they use real wood, actual shattered glass, genuine dust swept off the floor.
Yes. And crucially, they are captured using the exact same photochemical film stock, or today, the same digital sensors used for live-action cinema. If you hold up a strip of film from a live-action movie and a strip of film from a stop-motion movie, they look completely identical to the naked eye.
Really?
Yeah. They are both just a series of static, still images. The profound difference between the 2 mediums lies in what film theorists refer to as the profilmic moment.
Hold on, let's slow down and define profilming.
Okay.
Because that sounds like dense academic jargon, but the concept behind it actually kind of broke my brain when I first read it.
It's a great concept.
Okay.
The profilmic event is simply whatever happens in front of the camera lens while the shutter is open and the film is being exposed.
Okay.
In a live-action movie, the actor walks across the room, the camera rolls continuously, and the movement is captured.
Right.
The reality of that movement, the physics of the actor stepping from point A to point B, existed in the real world before the camera even recorded it.
Yes.
The camera is just a witness to a temporal event.
But in stop motion, that continuous temporal event doesn't exist.
That is the crux of the medium.
Right.
In stop motion, a physical object is placed on a set. It is completely invisible.
Yeah, it's still.
Exactly. The animator steps away. The The camera shutter clicks, exposing a single frame.
Okay.
The camera stops. The animator steps back onto the set, physically manipulates the object a fraction of a millimeter, steps away again, and the camera clicks a second time.
Wow.
The object itself never moves continuously. Its base state is immobility.
So the movement we see on the screen is a ghost. It's a total fabrication.
It is an illusion created entirely by the cinematic apparatus.
That is wild.
The movement only exists in the projection of the film, not in the recording of it.
Right.
You are watching a sequence of isolated, static, dead moments strung together so rapidly that your brain interprets it as life.
And the Quays take this fabrication to an obsessive extreme.
Oh, completely.
They aren't just working with smooth clay figures like, a Gumby or a Wallace and Gromit.
No.
Buchan describes their sets as a massive, overwhelming tapestry of the fine arts.
Yeah.
They are building microscopic worlds. They act as architects, designing these claustrophobic labyrinthine rooms.
Right.
They act as sculptors, carving delicate, decaying puppet heads. They act as painters, treating the surfaces of their sets with chemicals to age them artificially.
The detail is insane.
And then they weave in these time-bound arts, choreographing the movements like a ballet, syncing the microscopic twitches to incredibly complex atonal musical scores.
They are absolute polymaths of the miniature, and their choice of materials dictates the entire mood of the film.
How so?
They don't use clean, easily molded plastics, they scavenge. They use anachronistic, deeply textured debris, antique lace, rusted clockwork gears, dried leaves, hair.
Okay, I have a question here.
Sure.
Because a live-action director like Guillermo del Toro or Ridley Scott, they use incredibly detailed set design.
Oh, absolutely.
They age their props, they use gorgeous textured costumes. And today, CGI artists are exceptionally good at simulating decay.
They are.
You can program a digital shader to make a rusted screw, or a piece of peeling wallpaper to look hyper-real down to the microscopic pixel.
Right, totally photorealistic.
You can make digital dust float in digital light shafts, and it looks beautiful. So if the end result on the screen looks textured and weathered, why does our brain care if the object was manipulated by hand or generated by a graphics card?
That's a really good question.
Why is moving a real screw under a physical camera distinctly more powerful for the viewer?
Well, that gets to the heart of why practical effects often age better than digital ones, but it's deeper than just visual fidelity.
Okay.
The difference lies in what Buchan identifies as the artisanal qualities of the medium and how our neurology actually responds to those qualities.
Neurology.
Yeah. Stop-motion animation is arguably the most actively made kind of film in existence.
Actively made.
Yes. Every single frame, every 24th of a second of screen time requires direct physical human intervention.
Wow.
The artist's hands must touch the materials.
The labor is literally baked into the image.
Yes, and even if the viewer isn't consciously thinking, wow, this took a long time to make, they are subliminally aware of the immense painstaking labor.
That makes sense.
The slight imperfections in the movement, the tiny shifts in the lighting, the microscopic boiling of the textures of the film constantly reminds you of its own manufactured process.
Right.
But more importantly, there is a phenomenal difference between a mathematical simulation of dust and actual dust when it comes to human perception.
How so? If they look exactly the same to the eye.
Because vision is not isolated from the rest of the body. The Quays use real-world textures, tarnished metal, shattered glass, decaying wood, heavy layers of actual dust.
Right.
These materials have what philosophers call ontological weight. They exist in the real world.
Right, they're physical things.
When we see real dust illuminated by a harsh, practical light on a screen, the image bypasses our intellectual, categorizing brain and directly triggers our tactile haptic memories.
Haptic memory, meaning the memory of touch.
Exactly. Your body remembers what dust feels like on your fingertips.
Oh, wow.
Your nervous system knows the cold, hard, unyielding reality of metal. It knows the fragility of glass.
Yeah.
CGI engages the eye and the intellect. We look at a CGI screw and think, that looks like a screw.
Right.
But real materials engage the somatic memory of the physical body. When you look at the Quay's rusted metal, your skin practically remembers the threat of tetanus.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, because my physical nervous system deeply knows what a rusted screw feels like in the palm of my hand,
Yes.
when I see that exact physical object suddenly start untwisting itself and acting like a living creature, it creates a massive cognitive dissonance.
Exactly.
My eyes are telling me it's alive, but my haptic memory is screaming, that it's just cold, dead metal.
And that friction is exactly what generates the feeling of the uncanny.
Wow.
And, it leads perfectly into a massive philosophical debate that Buchan outlines in the text.
Oh, the film theory debate.
Yeah, it's a debate about the very nature of cinematic reality.
Okay.
If the objects on the screen are tangibly, physically real, but the movement we see them performing is entirely fabricated, a total manipulation of time, where does that leave our understanding of truth when we watch these films?
This is where Buchan dives into this heavyweight academic fight between two film theorists, right? Stanley Cavell and Alexander Sosonsky.
Yes.
It's fascinating because they are basically fighting over the soul of what a movie actually is.
Yes. It was a very contentious debate in the 1970s.
Really?
Yeah. Stanley Cavell wrote a highly influential book called The World Viewed. It was an ontological study of film.
Okay.
Cavell's core argument, which was derived from earlier theorists like André Bazin, was that cinema, by its fundamental nature, must be a projection of reality.
A projection of reality.
His logic was based on indexicality.
Indexicality, meaning that the camera is basically a mechanical witness.
Right. A photograph is an index of the physical world, the way a footprint is an index of a foot.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Light bounces off a real object, travels through a lens, and chemically alters the film emulsion.
Right.
Because of this mechanical process, Cavell argued that film is inextricably tied to projecting the real world. It guarantees that the object in front of the camera actually existed at a specific point in time.
It proves it was there.
Therefore, movies are inherently a realistic medium.
But then Alexander Sosonsky reads this grand theory, and he counters it by pointing at a cartoon mouse.
Sosonsky basically blew Cavell's theory up with Mickey Mouse.
I love that.
Sosonsky pointed out that traditional 2D animation cartoons completely destroy Cavell's rule.
Right.
Look at a Looney Tunes short. A singing duck, an anvil falling from the sky and flattening a coyote.
Right. None of that is real.
These creatures and spaces never existed in reality. They were drawn on paper. They exist only in the moment of projection on the screen.
There was no footprint because there was no foot.
Precisely. Every single feature of a cartoon differs from reality. They defy gravity, they stretch, squash, they ignore the laws of physics and time.
Yes.
There is no past time where a coyote actually survived an anvil drop for the camera to record.
Clearly.
Therefore, Sosonsky argued, cartoons prove that cinema does not have to project reality.
And Cavell's response to this is hilarious.
Oh, it really is.
Instead of adjusting his theory to include animation, he basically just says, well, then cartoons aren't movies.
He just banned them.
He completely exiled them from the definition of cinema. He claimed they were a different region entirely just to save his thesis.
It was a very rigid defense, but this is where Buchan's analysis of the Clay brothers becomes so crucial.
Okay, how do they fit in?
She points out that puppet animation, and specifically the hyper-textured, physically grounded animation of the Quays, completely shatters this philosophical binary.
Oh, wow.
Cavell says film is real. Sosonsky says animation is unreal.
And stop motion.
Stop motion sits right on the fault line between them.
Because it's fulfilling both requirements simultaneously.
It occupies a highly disruptive, paradoxical middle ground.
Yeah.
Think about the Quay sets. They present us with constructed rooms. These are real physical spaces. You could walk up to the miniature set with a tape measure and measure the wall.
Right, it exists.
They are populated by real objects, scissors, twine, doll heads that absolutely do exist in our physical world.
Yeah.
Light bounces off them and into the lens. The camera mechanically records their reality, perfectly fulfilling Cavell's indexical requirement.
But the behavior of those objects is pure Sosonsky.
Exactly. The behavior, a pair of scissors crawling across a table like a spider, is a complete machination.
It's totally impossible.
It defies the laws of nature. It never happened in continuous time. It fulfills Sazon's requirement of existing only in the projection.
Let's try to map this onto an everyday experience to show why this is so disruptive for a viewer.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine I show you a high-budget digital video on my phone of a dragon flying over a city and breathing fire.
Sure.
You might think, wow, the rendering on those scales is amazing, cool special effects.
Right.
Your brain instantly categorizes it as a digital illusion. You know it's not real, so you feel safe. You appreciate the artistry, but you aren't fundamentally disturbed by it.
The boundary between your reality and the screen's reality is completely completely solid.
Right. But now imagine we are sitting across from each other at a diner.
Okay.
I reach across the table, I pick up your actual physical metal coffee spoon. You just used it, you know its weight, and I hold it in my hand, I tap it with my finger, and the metal spoon suddenly folds its edges, turns into a silver butterfly, and flies out the window.
Oh, man.
Your brain wouldn't just appreciate the artistry, it would go into full meltdown.
I would definitely question my sanity.
Because you knew the spoon was physically real, your haptic memory validated.
Yeah.
So when this incredibly familiar, physically grounded object does something impossible, the disruption to your cognitive processing is vastly more violent than watching a digital dragon.
Oh, absolutely.
The quays are basically doing the magic trick with the diner spoon.
That analogy illustrates the danger of the medium perfectly.
Nice.
And it brings us to a concept from philosopher Ian Jarvie, which Buchan uses to explain our reaction to this magic trick.
Okay, what's this concept?
It's the idea of the voluntary illusion.
Voluntary illusion.
Jarvie argues that when we enter a cinema, we are voluntarily allowing ourselves to be illusioned. We know the movie isn't real life, but we agree to play along.
Right, suspension of disbelief.
Exactly. However, Jarvie says that by playfully confronting ourselves with the seemingly real on screen, we are actively testing the boundary line between the real and the unreal.
We're poking at the edges of our perception.
Yes. In traditional 2D animation or obvious CGI, that boundary line is a thick, impenetrable wall. We are safely insulated from the unreal.
Right.
But in the Quay's puppet animation, because of the photorealistic textures of the real-world objects and the indectable nature of the camera, that boundary line becomes incredibly permeable.
It gets fragile.
It becomes very fragile. When watching their films, our brains are constantly rapidly oscillating back and forth. I know this is just a dead piece of metal, but look at how sad that piece of metal looks, but it's just metal. But it's grieving.
Wow.
We are trapped in that oscillation.
Okay, so they established this incredibly delicate, permeable reality where we are primed to feel empathy for hardware.
Right.
But a moving screw isn't a story in itself.
No, it's not.
To build the actual worlds these objects inhabit, the Quays don't just rely on camera tricks and lighting.
They need more than that.
They populate their films with the ghosts of other artists, writers, and cultural outsiders.
Yes.
Which brings us to the concept of intertextuality and this amazing phrase by critic Paul Hammond, the nudged nature morning.
Of the nudged still life. It's a beautiful encapsulation of their work.
It really is.
To understand their intertextuality, we have to state up front that the Quay brothers are entirely uninterested in commercial storytelling.
Definitely.
They are not trying to make a Pixar movie. They are not making children's entertainment.
Far from it.
Their work is fiercely idiosyncratic, profoundly adult, deeply psychological, and highly experimental.
Right.
And to fuel this kind of work, they draw upon an eclectic, almost overwhelming symphony of influences.
The list of their inspirations in Buchan's text reads like a syllabus for a graduate seminar on the dark underbelly of European modernism.
It really does.
They're heavily influenced by Franz Kafka, obviously, with his themes of bureaucratic alienation and bizarre transformation.
Most huge Kafka influence.
They pull from the Swiss writer Robert Walser, who wrote these incredibly dense microscript texts,
Right.
and heavily from the Polish Jewish writer Bruno Schulz. In fact, Schultz's short story collection provided the title and the thematic spine for the film we keep coming back to, Street of Crocodiles.
Schultz is a vital touchstone for them.
How so?
His writing is obsessed with the undercurrents of life, the metaphysical properties of matter, and the fantastic realities buried inside the banal, everyday world.
Oh, that sounds exactly like them.
He wrote extensively about the degradation of matter, how reality is constantly decaying and reforming. The Keys absolutely recognized a kindred spirit in that.
But they don't stop at established literary figures.
No, they don't.
They pull just as heavily from bizarre, raw, non-literary sources. Specifically, they are fascinated by art brut, which translates roughly to raw art or outsider art. This is art created by people entirely outside the established art world, often psychiatric patients, prisoners, or isolated individuals, creating art out of pure, unfiltered psychological necessity.
Buchan spends significant time detailing their fascination with the Prinzhorn collection, which is a famous archive of art created by psychiatric patients in the early 20th century.
Right.
She specifically highlights their obsession with a woman named Emma Hawke.
The story of Emma Hawke is incredibly tragic, but visually fascinating.
It is deeply tragic. She was a patient committed to a psychiatric hospital in Germany around 1909. diagnosed with dementia precox, which we would now call schizophrenia. While hospitalized, she wrote letters to her husband.
But they weren't normal.
No, the letters weren't normal correspondence at all. She would write the phrase, come sweetheart, come sweetheart, come over and over again on the same small sheet of paper.
Wow.
She wrote it so relentlessly, layering the words on top of each other, that the graphite completely obscured the paper.
Just completely blacked it out.
The words became totally illegible. The letters ceased to be language and turned into these dark, claustrophobic, vibrating blocks of pure texture.
That is so haunting.
They are visual monuments to desperate, trapped obsession.
And they also looked at Adolf Loefli, right? Another psychiatric patient.
Yes, a Swiss man who spent most of his adult life in an asylum.
What did he do?
He rigorously produced thousands of pages of incredibly dense, labyrinthine drawings, writings, and musical compositions. He basically created an entire self-contained universe on paper to escape his confinement.
Okay, so this is where my practical filmmaking brain hits a wall.
Okay, why?
If you are a director and you are trying to adapt a traditional novel, you write a script, cast some actors, build a set, and film the scenes.
Straightforward.
It's straightforward translation. But how do you adapt Emma Hawke's schizophrenic letter?
Right.
It's a two-dimensional piece of paper covered in illegible graphite. How do you take the feeling of a dense Kafka story or the claustrophobia of Hawke's letter and turn that into a physical three-dimensional space that a camera can move through?
That challenge is what separates the Quays from almost every other filmmaker.
How do you do it?
They bypass literal adaptation entirely.
Oh, interesting. If you gave a standard Hollywood director a Bruno Schultz story, they would try to extract a plot.
Right.
The Crees don't extract plot, they extract atmosphere. Erokhane uses two crucial terms to explain this process: palimpsest and visual neologisms.
Let's break those down. A palimpsest, historically, what is that?
A palimpsest originally refers to an ancient manuscript scroll. Parchment was expensive, so scribes would take an old text, scrape the ink off, and write a new text over it.
Okay, it's safe paper.
But the scraping was never perfect. The traces of the original writing, the ghosts of the old ink, would bleed through and remain faintly visible beneath the new text.
So you have multiple layers of history and meaning occupying the exact same space.
Exactly. The Crees treat their films as cinematic palimpsests.
Oh, wow.
They take the original text, say, a Bruno Schultz story, or the emotional weight of Emma Hawke's letter, and they don't recreate it, they build over it.
I see.
But they allow the ghosts of the original source to bleed through into the visual design. And that leads to the visual neologisms. A neologism is a newly coined word, right?
Yeah.
Like someone inventing the word internet when the technology first appeared.
Yes, creating a new word to describe a new phenomenon.
Right.
The Quays are creating newly coined visual language.
How so?
They take the psychological feeling of those texts, the crushing, repetitive obsession of Hawke's letter, the decaying, degraded matter of Schultz's world, the bureaucratic nightmare of Kafka, and they compress those abstract feelings into physical, graphic stylizations.
So how does that actually look on screen?
Well, it translates into moldered textures. It translates into erratic, stuttering puppet gestures that mimic the repetition of Hawke's pencil.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It translates into incredibly stark chiaroscuro lighting, that extreme high contrast battle between blinding light and pitch blackness.
Yeah.
They aren't telling you the narrative story of Emma Hawke. They are making you physically feel the claustrophobia of her letters by locking the camera in a tiny, dusty, shadowy wooden box with a twitching mechanical insect that keeps bumping into the wall. They translate emotional states into a poetic, spatial, cinematic world.
That is a brilliant way to explain it. You aren't watching a story, you are exploring an externalized psychological state.
Exactly.
Which perfectly explains why the K's embraced Paul Hammond's definition of their work. The nudged nature morte.
The nudged still life.
A still life that has just been slightly imperceptibly nudged into motion. It acknowledges the deadness of the materials, but captures the eerie elegance of their artificial life.
It's the perfect phrase. It forces us to confront the core paradox of their art. The base state of their materials is dead, still nature morte.
Right.
But through the alchemy of the animator's hands, it is nudged into a semblance of life.
And this brings us to the absolute core mystery of this deep dive.
Here we go.
We've established the physical reality of the puppets. We've established the psychological density of the sets. But if they're just nudging a still life, moving a piece of rusted metal a fraction of an inch at a time, how does that mechanical nudge convince our highly evolved, complex human brains that a piece of dead matter actually has a soul?
It's a huge question.
How are we tricked into feeling deep empathy for a screw?
Well, to answer that, Buchan plunges us into the philosophy of the moving object.
Okay.
She relies heavily on two massive philosophical concepts to explain the mechanism behind the Quay's work: animism and vitalism.
Let's tackle animism first. Because when most people, myself included, hear the word animism, our minds immediately go to anthropology class.
Right, of course.
We think of Edward Tyler's 19th century theories about ancient or indigenous religions. The belief that a specific tree has a tree spirit or a river has a water god.
That is the anthropological definition, yes.
Yeah.
But Buchan makes a very careful, crucial distinction here.
Okay, what is it?
She is not talking about religious animism. She is talking about Platonic animism, which has its roots in ancient Greek philosophy, specifically Plato and later the Gnostics.
How does Platonic animism differ from the tree spirit idea?
Platonic animism is a metaphysical proposition.
Okay.
It is the belief that the entire universe is imbued with a world soul. It proposes that all inanimate and vegetal matter possesses a universal underlying spiritual essence.
A universal essence.
It's not that the tree has a specific personality, it's that the matter the tree is made of is inherently vital and connected to the cosmos.
But we don't really think like that anymore, do we? Culturally, we moved away from that centuries ago.
We did, definitely. During the Enlightenment and subsequently the Industrial Revolution, Platonic animism was aggressively crushed by Aristotelian materialism and Cartesian dualism.
A lot of isms there.
Basically, we understood a mechanistic view of the universe. The universe became a giant, dead, clockwork machine made of atoms bouncing into each other.
Right.
Matter was demoted to just being stuff that humans could exploit.
So a rusted screw is just a rusted screw. Dead iron.
Exactly. But the cinematic apparatus of stop-motion animation quite literally allows this ancient, discarded Platonic universal to be resurrected and tangibly embodied on screen.
Oh, so.
Through the technique of single-frame animation, the filmmaker breathes a synthetic soul into dead matter. When we watch a Quay Brothers film, we are physically seeing the inanimate universe acting as if it has intent.
Oh, wow.
The clockwork universe suddenly wakes up.
And that awakening ties right into the second philosophical concept, vitalism.
Yes. Vitalism is, in many ways, a philosophical rebellion against that cold, mechanistic, clockwork view of the universe.
Okay.
Vitalism rejects the idea that organic life, human behavior, or the behavior of the universe at large can be explained entirely by physical mechanics and chemistry.
Right.
Vitalists argue that there is some other vital spark, the underlying energy that drives existence. And to ground this in the Quay's work, Buchan introduces the heavy hitter of 19th century pessimism, the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer.
Ah, Schopenhauer, the life of the party.
He was a famously grumpy man, but his ideas were revolutionary. Schopenhauer proposed the concept of the will.
The will with a capital W.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we define this clearly, because my initial reaction to this is pure skepticism.
Okay, let's hear it.
Are you, or is Schopenhauer telling me that a dead piece of wood has a will? That it wants things? Because that sounds like magic, not philosophy. It sounds absurd.
It sounds totally absurd until you understand how Schopenhauer defines the will.
Okay.
He is not talking about conscious desire. He's not saying the piece of wood wants to be a table.
Right.
For Schopenhauer, the will is the ultimate fundamental reality of the universe. It is a blind, non-rational, ceaseless, universal driving force.
Driving force.
It exists behind absolutely everything. It is the force behind human consciousness, behind the growth of organic life, and crucially, behind the formation of inorganic nature.
Really?
Yes, gravity, magnetism, crystallization, these are all expressions of this blind will.
So what are we looking at when we look at a piece of wood?
We are looking at the representation.
Presentation.
Schopenhauer argued that the physical world we see around us, the shapes, colors, objects, is merely the outer shell. It is the representation of the will.
Okay.
He famously said that the human intellect is a superficial tool. It only ever touches the outer shell of things.
Right.
It categorizes the wood as fuel or building material, but it never penetrates to the inner core, the raw, vital energy underneath.
Okay, let's connect this dense philosophy back to the cinematic experience.
Right.
Earlier, you mentioned Jean Mitry, the theorist who talked about the wow experience.
Right.
Mitry had a very specific rule for cinema. He claimed that cinema must express life with life itself.
Right. Mitry believed the power of film was capturing the human face. You point a camera at a living, breathing human actor to express the human condition. You express express life with life.
But the keys throw that rule entirely out the window.
They absolutely annihilate it. The keys mount a massive challenge to traditional human-centric cinema.
Yeah.
They do not express life with life. They express life with dead matter.
Wow.
By taking a rusted gear, or a bundle of twine, or a piece of wire, and animating it so that it moves with a halting, strange intention, they are visually tearing away Schopenhauer's outer shell.
They're peeling back the representation.
Yes, they are showing us a visual representation of the universal will operating within the inorganic world.
That's incredible.
They bypass the human actor entirely to show us the raw, non-rational driving force of the universe embedded in a pile of dust. They are visualizing the invisible energy that Schopenhauer wrote about.
But how does this abstract philosophy actually land emotionally for a regular person? Like, how does this feel in practice?
Good question.
Let me try another analogy, because this is something almost every single human being has experienced.
Okay.
Think back to when you were a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old. You were sitting on the living room rug, and you were playing with a plastic action figure, or a doll, or even just a stick you found in the yard.
Yeah.
Logically, that piece of plastic is just molded petrochemicals. It is dead matter. But your imagination was so potent, so fluid, that you effortlessly projected a will into it.
You really did.
You made the plastic figure talk, you made it fight, you made it feel sorrow when it lost the battle. As a child, you naturally, effortlessly engaged in platonic animism. You breathed the soul into the dead world around you.
Children do this instinctually. Their boundary between the animate and inanimate is highly porous.
But as we grow up, the adult world demands efficiency. Our rational, categorizing brains lock that magical ability away.
Sadly, yes.
We look at a stapler on a desk and we don't see a character, we just see a tool. We adopt the clockwork universe.
Right.
What the Gray brothers are doing is using their absolute mastery of cinematic technique, the lighting, the macro lenses, the exactingly choreographed micro movements, to forcefully bypass your adult rationality. They are using technology to pry open that locked door in your brain. They force you to experience that childhood projection of will once again. Yeah. When you watch their films, you are a child on the rug again, believing the plastic has a soul.
That is a profoundly accurate way to describe the psychological mechanics at play.
Thanks.
The Quays are weaponizing nostalgia, but not in a sentimental way. They are weaponizing childhood cognitive states,
Wow.
but they aren't doing it to make you feel safe or comforted. This forceful projection of the will doesn't just make for a neat visual trick. It fundamentally alters your psychological state in the moment of viewing.
Yeah.
It creates a very specific, highly addictive, and often deeply uncomfortable feeling.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most important piece of the puzzle. The actual lived experience of the viewer.
Right.
What happens to your mind when it is trapped in this metaphysical playroom? When it is forced into this state of defamiliarization and apprehension?
Defamiliarization is the key word here. To explain how this works on the viewer, Buchan brings in literary theory, specifically Russian formalism, and the critic Viktor Shklovsky.
Let's break down Russian formalism a bit. What were they arguing?
Shklovsky and the formalists were writing in the early 20th century, and they were concerned with how perception works.
Okay.
Shklovsky argued that as we go through daily life, our perception becomes heavily automated.
Automated perception.
Think about driving your normal route home from work. You arrive in your driveway and you realize you have zero memory of the last 15 minutes of the drive. Your brain was on autopilot.
It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. Our brains are incredibly efficient.
Exactly.
If we had to deeply analyze every single object we encountered, every chair, every doorknob, every coffee cup,
Yeah,
we would be paralyzed by sensory overload.
it would be too much.
So we just categorize it quickly and move on. Chair, sit, done.
Exactly. We see a chair, we recognize it's a chair, but we don't truly look at it. We ignore the texture of the wood or the angle of the legs. The Shklovsky believed that this automation of perception is a kind of living death. It makes the world gray and invisible.
Wow.
Therefore, he argued, the entire purpose of art is to break this automation. Art exists to make objects unfamiliar.
Make them unfamiliar.
The technique of art is to make forms difficult, to actively increase the difficulty and length of perception.
So the goal isn't to make something easy to look at, but hard to look at.
Yes. The goal is to make the act of perceiving an aesthetic end in itself.
Right.
You have to work for it. You have to actively decode the image instead of just letting it wash over you. And no one embodies Shklovsky's theory better than the Quay brothers.
Give me a concrete example of how they defamiliarize an object.
Let's take a common object you might use, a pair of rusted scissors.
Okay.
If you saw scissors on a desk, you'd register cutting tool and look away.
Right.
But the Quays take those scissors and place them in a miniature set. They light them with harsh, eerie chiaroscuro, creating bizarre shadows. They film them with a macro lens, meaning the depth of field is incredibly shallow. The background is a blurry, confusing void, and only the rusted pivot screw of the scissors is in razor-sharp focus.
Wow.
And then, through animation, they make the scissors slowly open and close as they crawl across a tabletop like a wounded crab.
They've taken something completely mundane and made it utterly alien.
Exactly. You can't just glance at the screen and categorize it. Your brain says scissors, but your eyes see wounded metal crab.
Yeah.
You are forced to stare at it, to struggle with it, to prolong your perception of it. The automation is broken.
And this struggle leads right into the critical difference between comprehension and apprehension.
It does.
Because normally, when we watch a movie or read an article or listen to a podcast, a deep dive, we want comprehension.
We want to understand.
You want to fully understand the information. If we are watching a thriller, we want to comprehend the plot. The detective is chasing the killer to get the evidence. Boom. Comprehended.
Yeah.
We can relax and eat our popcorn.
But the Quays deny you comprehension. They intentionally withhold the narrative keys that would allow you to relax.
Right.
Instead, they offer apprehension. And in this academic context, apprehension has a very specific, nuanced meaning.
It's not just feeling anxious about a test.
No. Apprehension means grasping something with your intellect, but without affirmation.
Okay.
It is an anticipation that what is coming may not be what is expected. It's the cognitive condition of understanding that you cannot fully know the object you are looking at.
Oh, wow.
You sense its weight, you sense its importance, but you cannot lock it into a definitive meaning.
It's that feeling of holding your breath. You know something profound is happening on the screen.
Yes.
You feel the emotional weight of the moving screws and the dusty dolls, but you know you can't map it onto a normal 3-act narrative grid. You are grasping the experience, but you aren't comprehending.
Yes, and that prolonged state of apprehension is deeply intertwined with the psychological concept of the uncanny.
The uncanny valley.
Related, yes. The German word is unheimlich. It's a Freudian concept describing something that is simultaneously familiar and foreign, resulting in a feeling of uncomfortable weirdness.
Like a doll.
A doll is unheimlich because it looks human but isn't. The quiz sets are unheimlich because they look like real rooms, but they are governed by dream logic.
Right.
And this entire cocktail of defamiliarization, apprehension, and the uncanny culminates in what philosopher Jane Bennett calls the phenomenology of enchantment.
Enchantment. When I hear that word, I immediately think of Disney. Fairy godmothers, sparkling wands, happy endings. But Bennett means something much sharper and more dangerous, doesn't she?
She does. Bennett's definition of enchantment is entirely stripped of that sugary commercial sheen.
Okay.
For Bennett, enchantment is a surprise encounter marked by two very distinct, almost contradictory elements.
What are they?
First, there is a pleasurable feeling of being charmed. When you look at the miniature sets the Quays build, the exquisite textures of the lace and the metal, the meticulous lighting, you are aesthetically charmed.
It's beautiful.
It is undeniable, hauntingly beautiful. But second, coexisting with that charm, there is that unheimlich, uncanny feeling of being disrupted.
You are violently torn out of your default sensory disposition.
Exactly. It's a somatic effect, meaning it affects your physical body. Your heart rate might change, your breathing might get shallower.
Wow.
You are charmed by the beauty, but disturbed by the impossibility of the movement. You are enchanted.
Okay, I want to synthesize this because this is the ultimate so what of this entire deep dive.
Let's do it.
This is why anyone listening to this should care about a niche, Polish-influenced stop-motion animation from the 1980s.
Right.
Think about our modern daily lives. We are constantly, relentlessly bombarded with easy information.
Much of it.
We look at a phone screen, we swipe, the algorithm feeds us a recognizable trope, we get a microdose of dopamine, and we swipe again. Our brains are on extreme high-speed autopilot.
We are living in Shklovsky's automated coma.
Yes, we look at a coffee cup, we know it's a cup, we take a sip, we never feel the ceramic.
Our perception is entirely instrumentalized.
Right. But the Quay brothers agree aggressively refuse to give you easy information.
They absolutely do.
By making you, the viewer, work incredibly hard to understand why a rusted screw is revolving in a bed of dust while a haunting atonal music track plays in the background. They are giving your brain what Bennett calls a shot in the arm.
A wake-up call.
They are actively shocking your neurological system to recharge your circulation and your concentration. They are forcing you to wake up from the coma of everyday automatic perception and actually look at the physical world again.
That is the ultimate poetics of their work. They don't offer a traditional plot. They don't hold your hand and guide you through a moral lesson. Instead, they drop you into what literary theorists call a hermeneutic circle.
A hermeneutic circle, a circle of interpretation.
Yes. It's a maze of soundscapes, eerie lighting, and tactile objects. They provide the raw, highly charged materials, the nudged nature morte, but they require the viewer to actively build the meaning.
You have to do the work.
Your brain has to assemble the pieces. You have to project your own will into the void they've created.
Wow.
And because every viewer brings their own subconscious baggage, their own childhood memories, their own haptic reactions to the film, the meaning that is built is always intensely personal, always fluid, and always deeply felt.
It's like they build a haunted house, but instead of cheap jump scares and monsters in the closet, the ghosts haunting the house are your own forgotten childhood memories of how vast, mysterious, and alive the physical world felt before you grew up and categorized it all.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's a forced return to the pre-verbal awe of the wow experience that Suzanne Buchan had in that cellar.
Okay, let's take a breath. We have covered a staggering amount of philosophical and cinematic ground today through Buchan's thesis.
We really have.
We started in that dank cellar, exploring the pre-verbal wow experience and the Joycian epiphany of seeing something so dense it bursts waking logic. We broke down the literal, physical parameters of stop-motion animation, spending time on that mind-bending concept of the profilmic moment, where the movement we see is a total ghost.
Yeah.
And exploring how real-world textures bypass our intellect to directly trigger our nervous system's haptic memories.
We waded through the fierce philosophical debates between Cavell and Sisonske, realizing that puppet animation uniquely shatters the boundary between real, indexical objects and fabricated, impossible behavior.
Crazy.
We unpack the cave's dense intertextuality, discussing how they act as palimpsests, translating the claustrophobic feeling of Emma Hawke's schizophrenic letters, and Bruno Schultz's decaying worlds into newly coined visual neologism, creating that perfect nudged nature morte.
We ventured into the deep waters of Platonic animism and Schopenhauer's concept of the will, seeing how the Quees bypass human actors to show us the secret, vital inner core of inorganic matter. And finally, we looked at the psychological result of all this, how it defamiliarizes our automated world, trapping us in a state of apprehension that ultimately leads to a profound, brain-recharging, physical enchantment. It is an immense amount of insight packed into one body of work.
It really highlights how a seemingly niche art form can serve as a profound magnifying glass for human consciousness.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to take with you into the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
The next time you are sitting at your desk or maybe cooking in your kitchen or out in your garage, I want you to stop and look at an ordinary, inanimate object near you.
All right.
Maybe it's a heavy tape dispenser or a chipped ceramic mug, or even just a stray piece of hardware, a dull screw left over from building a bookshelf.
Look closely at its texture.
Really look at it.
Look at the scratches, the way the light hits it. Try to break your automated perception of it. Imagine for just a moment that it possesses Schopenhauer's will, that it has a vital, non-rational spark humming beneath its dead outer shell.
If you weren't looking, what secret, miniature life might it be living? What intention might it have? Perhaps the real magic of the Quay brothers' metaphysical playroom isn't that they invent a bizarre new fantasy world to escape into, but that they remind us of the deep, strange, and entirely wondrous mysteries hiding right there in the textures of our own. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been an absolute privilege to explore these dark, magical waters.
We'll see you next time. And remember, keep a close eye on your desk drawer. You never know when the paper clips might just decide to organize themselves.